All right, welcome back, everybody. This is the fifth installment of the J-Mac and the Stallion podcast. I'm J-Mac, and sitting next to me here, Stallion. Oh, excuse me, I think I messed that one up, didn't I?
It's okay. Greatness always comes first.
I know, I totally, didn't want to sound too conceited there to call myself out. So, yeah, I'm the Stallion, that's J-Mac. Jason, how are you doing today?
Dude, I'll tell you what. As we're setting up today for this episode, I was actually pretty excited. I got everything written on the board, all the topics we're going to talk about, but there's only one problem. You know what that was?
I do, but let's let you explain that to the audience.
Dude, the problem is as we're getting ready to press record and throw down some lightning, way good freaking podcast information, we have a freaking epic game of freaking air hockey going on behind us, and you can hear click, clink, score. And it was I'll tell you what, it was a very annoying sound to hear.
Yeah, no doubt, because we were in actually kind of a nice, cozy little room. Would have been perfect for podcasting,
Sound perfect.
Exactly. It was awesome. And then I just hear blang, 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 they're just hitting the air hockey thing. And the reason why I didn't think it was going to be a problem is because they said only 5 more minutes and then we'll go. But that was 20 minutes previous, and we were still setting up, and literally they kept going. And there was at one point, we heard them stop, and we're like, wait, are they going to leave? Are they going to go? And then we see this girl, she gets up, and she goes over to the water fountain, takes a drink, and then comes back, and I hear clang, 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 clang. And so we had to move shop. So now we're in this comfy big room with a bunch of chairs. So hopefully the audio sounds a little bit almost as good as what it would be in the other room. But regardless, like Jason said, we have a fire podcast for you today. A lot of stuff to talk about. We're going to start with the NBA per usual, and we're going to just wrap up the series last week. As you all know, the Raptors beat the Bucks on their home floor, Game 6 in the Eastern Conference Finals, and we just want to give our almost closure on that series, closing thoughts. So, Jason, what do you think about that series as a whole, or what do you think about Game 6?
For me, Game 6 was all about Kawhi Leonard. I mean, he played lights out. He finished with 27 points and 17 rebounds and 7 assists. I mean, he was only 3 assists away from a triple-double. He's been great for that team throughout this whole entire playoffs. He's been playing. I mean, if you look on social media, or at least all over ESPN, a lot of people are saying he is the closest to the Michael Jordan that we all know. He is the Michael Jordan-esque right now of the NBA. So he's playing lights out, and their team was playing great, and I honestly felt like they deserved to win that game.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. Kawhi is a beast, and everyone hopefully now sees it a little bit more. But I'm going to take another side to this one. I think this game was about Giannis Antetokounmpo and his lack of consistent offense when it comes to anything outside the paint. I really think that's what the series came down to. There were a lot of games where Giannis felt extremely ineffective, and he was reversed from his stardom in that series a lot because of Kawhi's defense and his inability to shoot jump shots on a consistent basis. So that Game 6 to me really does come down to Giannis really needing to develop a jump shot to become that upper echelon player in the NBA. I think if he does that, the sky's the limit for Giannis, and I don't think Toronto will be back, even if Kawhi does stay next time around once he gets that jump shot. But, yeah, I completely agree with you that Toronto was the better team throughout that series, and they definitely deserve that series win. So,
yeah, and, looking at Giannis, right now he's in the MVP finalist list. It's Giannis, James Harden, and I believe Paul George is the third one.
I think so.
But
I think that it's more of a 2-horse race this year, I would imagine.
Yeah, but
James Harden,
they have
Giannis.
to have 3. It's like the Heisman. You have to have a certain amount of finalists. But, let me ask you this, Mark. With Giannis and the Bucks losing, do you think it's a wrap that he gets MVP? Or do you even think that he is the current MVP in your eyes?
I believe so. I believe Giannis is still the MVP. Obviously, it's a regular season award, but I think we'd be lying if we didn't take the playoffs into account. And the reason I think this, especially with factoring in the playoffs, which I know shouldn't be done, but will kind of be done in a lot of people's eyes because that's human nature. I know the vote's already cast. I think it comes down to, like you said, it was Giannis, James Harden, Paul George. Paul George, first round exit. James Harden, really embarrassing fashion of exit in the playoffs.
I agree. And
so, I'm not going to say by default, but I think he's the best candidate left standing in the Eastern Conference Finals now. Taking Toronto to 6 probably should have been 7, I would think. But, taking that team to 6 and the incredible season he had, also leading the Bucks to, I think, the number 1 seed in the East, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
I think all those things factor in. I think he is still deserving of the MVP this year.
And I know you mentioned, the MVP award is a regular season award. But let me ask you this. With the playoffs, I know it's not a factor in the decision, but it is part of the season, so to speak.
Uh-huh.
Do you think with the performance of Kawhi Leonard, during the playoffs this year, do you think he has an argument to be in that discussion? With those 3 finalists?
This is kind of a tough one for me because with the way he's playing, I say yes, but he did miss around 20-something games in the regular season. I think it was 22. So based off of his play solely, I would say yes, he absolutely is. And if we were factoring the playoffs, he is the MVP of the league, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But missing those 22 games, I think, really gives me pause on handing him the trophy as opposed to Giannis, who played a majority of the games for the Bucks this year. I think it really just does come down to that for me, even if it is a shallow answer. I don't think he should be, though, because of him missing games.
No, I see your point. And, when I look at Kawhi, especially during the regular season, I know naturally he's a quiet guy. He's not a person that really, is very flamboyant or, with his money or even with just his persona and how he plays. He's just a very quiet player. But I could totally see, like your point, how, he did miss all those games, and if you factor in that he's not a finalist. But I do agree. I definitely think with the playoffs, he's been playing lights out. Great defense, especially on Giannis. That was a difference maker in that whole series.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then going into game 1, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but he's just playing at a high level.
Yeah, he's playing at an extremely high level. I hope people are back on how good Kawhi is. I've always thought that even that year he was injured in San Antonio, I think people need to start giving him the credit he deserves. But
was he injured, though?
We can talk about that maybe a little bit more as we move on to our next topic. We're going to talk about a retrospective on the DeMar DeRozan trade. And I know the season isn't officially over, but it's pretty close, and we have the Warriors and the Raptors in the NBA Finals. And obviously, last summer, the Raptors shipped off DeMar DeRozan to the San Antonio Spurs in exchange for Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green, and then some other moving parts as well. But I'm going to pose the question to you, Jason. Do you think, in a retrospective way, was this worth it for the Toronto Raptors to trade for Kawhi, just even for this 1 year?
I think it was good for them. I think that was very hard because if you look at the Raptors roster and the organization, DeMar DeRozan's been there since day one. He was drafted by the team. I think he was there for 8 years, 7 or 8 years. And I just felt bad because the previous years, literally LeBron has been the kryptonite.
For DeMar?
For the DeMar and the Raptors.
Yeah.
Especially last year. Toronto was the number 1 team last year in the East, and didn't they get swept?
I think it was.
Yeah, they just straight up got swept, and it was just LeBron, they cannot beat LeBron.
No.
But if you look at the team, it's hard to say that Kawhi was the key ingredient to getting to the finals because if you look at Pascal Siakam, he's been playing lights out this whole year. At the trade deadline, they traded for Marc Gasol. I thought that was a beautiful and great move for that organization. And if you look at Van Fleet, he's been playing lights out the last few games, near the end of the season. And so people, it's they're getting hot at the right time. They made the right moves at the right time. And so I think Kawhi definitely plays a good part in that. But you definitely have to also include that they're making the right decisions as an organization to build a winning culture and bringing in players. But let me ask you this question, Mark. Do you feel like with LeBron not being in the East anymore, do you think that played a factor in the Toronto actually making it to the finals?
That is also a tough question because initially I want to say yes, but my mind goes back to that Boston Celtics Cleveland series last year where the Celtics took LeBron to Game 7 and LeBron barely squeaked that one out to get into the finals, right? And that was without Kyrie Irving. Everyone has to remember that. So that was a very good team. I understand that. But, I mean, we kind of saw the vulnerability of LeBron late in the playoffs last year. So I'm going to say this has more to do with Kawhi than it does with LeBron leaving. Simply because I think even in the East this year, I think Toronto would have actually beat LeBron's Cavaliers in the East this year. Like if they were head-to-head. I mean, obviously, I think probably Toronto would have the home court advantage. That would be a big advantage for them as well. But I do think it's more the Raptors than it is LeBron-less East. So, I mean, just for that simple fact, I know obviously LeBron's a great player. Playoff LeBron's different than regular season LeBron, but I mean wear and tear. I think it's gotten to LeBron a little bit, and I think his dominance over the NBA is kind of coming to an end a little bit.
Okay.
What do you think, Jason? More Raptors or LeBron?
I'm going pro LeBron. I really am. LeBron is a great leader. He makes his teammates better around him. And if you look at the Cleveland Cavaliers, let's say the first time they made the finals. I mean, that team was an awful team. You had Mo Williams, you had Delonte West, you had Ilgauskas. I mean, you had a bunch of just randos.
Yeah,
but like
a bunch of 2K guys who you pick up at my park.
Oh yeah, dude.
Playing with LeBron.
It's like you do build your own team, and all the good players are gone.
Yeah, you get the bronze pack, and then you have LeBron. You know.
Yeah, dude. It's like that team is literally just a fruitcake, just a random bits and pieces that you put together, dude. Like
fruitcake, and no one likes fruitcakes, by the way. So
yeah, but I mean, if you look at that team and you look at last year's team, I know they had Kevin Love, but it was the Kyrie-less team. They weren't really that great of a team. I mean, yes, they did make it to the finals, but I mean, I just think LeBron James was a big factor in the East. He's a very dominant player. I know you think that his reign's coming down to kind of an end, but I think that was a big reason why Toronto made it to the finals this year.
So let me ask you this: obviously, you think it's LeBron more. I think it's the Raptors more. Just kind of, why do you think LeBron wasn't able to take the Lakers to even the playoffs this year if he was so dominant in the East? Or what's so different between the East and the West to where LeBron can't make the playoffs in the West but always makes the finals in the East?
Well, I think the East is weaker, so that does play a factor in the quality of opponents. The West is stacked, but I think a big reason why LeBron didn't lead the Lakers to the playoffs was, he was injured for 20 plus games. Before he got injured, the Lakers were the number 2 team in the West. They looked really good. Obviously it was still before All-Star break or right around that point, but still, those 20 games were crucial.
Because we know in the West that 2 games can be the difference between the 2nd and the 8th seed.
Yeah, it's so competitive that just like you said, those games matter, and unfortunately, they did lose a lot of games. I think that a part of it had to do with LeBron not really being there on the floor in that leadership role in elevating, the players around him.
Yeah.
I mean, he can only do so much on the sideline, but there's definitely, when you have the greatest player in the world, so to speak, I know that's up
arguably.
I know that's up for debate, but that's a big difference maker. On the floor when you have that kind of caliber player with you.
Who's been there, done that, and I have to imagine that when you're on the floor with a LeBron, just all the attention goes there, and he's just kind of almost like the mastermind behind the game, and I bet that would be a big help too. So, yeah, I'm all in all, I think the Toronto made the right decision for Kawhi Leonard. Do you think they made the right decision though with that trade? That's a different argument.
Yeah, no,
altogether.
it is. Yeah, I think they did. I think it was worth the gamble. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about where Kawhi is, projected to go in this offseason. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent, so there's been a lot of reports he'll go to maybe LA with the Clippers, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for the win now mentality, I think it was the perfect move for them.
Mm-hmm.
And fingers crossed that, let's say they win the finals this year. Hopefully, I know front office and everyone there, they're hoping that establishing that winning culture there, that will entice him to stay. So,
Okay.
Overall, I think the trade was a benefit for Toronto.
Yeah, I do too, in the simple fact that, yes, they're going to win now. They have a player like Kawhi Leonard to go to the finals and really get them over that hump. And if he leaves, you know what? It's over. You almost blow it up, or maybe you add a couple more pieces. I mean, I guess before the season, I would think that you would blow it up, but now with the emergence of Pascal Siakam, you still have a guy that you could build around. So, and you're free of that cap that DeMar DeRozan would have required. So you have a lot more flexibility there. So all in all, I think Toronto did make the right decision. It was a great trade by their GM. But anyways, we're going to move on. We're going to talk about the NBA Finals. Game 1 happened tonight. We actually sat down and watched the game together at your place. Hawaiian Haystacks and Little Caesars, and you made a protein shake with berries and vanilla from Walmart or something.
Yeah, dude, it was dope.
It was pretty dope. I'm not going to lie. But what wasn't dope was the results of Game 1 as a Warriors fan. Toronto ended up winning the game by, I think, 9 points. 118 to 109, yep. So 9 points. Jason, we're just going to kind of talk about the game and what we observed a little bit more, seeing as we watched it together. What did you see that gave Toronto the edge, and what did you see out of the Warriors?
Oh, the story of the game was Pascal Siakam, hands down. I mean, all year he's been playing at such a high level, and especially during the playoffs. I mean, he scored 32 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists. From the field, he was 14 of 17. I mean, he was efficient. He was able to rebound and really defend well. There's a couple times when he played really good defense on not only Klay Thompson but also Draymond Green, which are two good players that get hot or can that are two players that really help the Warriors win. They're key players. So I think the story is him and his performance. Kawhi Leonard had a good game. I mean, he scored 23. But I give credit to the Warriors, though. Even though he did score 23, dude, the first half into the third quarter, they were all over him.
Well, I think they were all over him the entire game. He just started making shots at the end.
Yeah, I think also Toronto was able to get him the mismatches that they needed.
And he got to the foul line.
Yeah, I mean, Kawhi was very efficient from the line. He was 10 of 12. I mean, he was big, but. Once again, story of the game, Pascal Siakam. But what about you? I mean, I know you're a diehard Warriors fan, but what did you see from the Warriors, point of view that maybe you wish they would have done better, or what did they do good during the game?
I wish they had moved the ball a little bit better. It was weird. KD wasn't out on the floor, but it almost felt like they were playing a little bit of KD ball where they weren't really setting the screens as effectively or back cuts and such. And there were a lot of turnovers. So I kind of wish they would move the ball better, and I think they will come Game 2. Steve Kerr's a smart coach, and they're a very smart team, and they are the kind of team that will come out and adjust. So I'm not worried about that. One thing I really liked out of the Warriors was Steph Curry. I think he quietly had a very dominant game that many people won't recognize when you look at the final score. So just looking at his stats, he played 40 minutes, 8 for 18 from the field, 4 for 9 from 3, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 34 points, and he was perfect from the line. I think it was 14 of 14 or 13 of 13. So one thing I really did like was an aggressive Stephen Curry. There were a lot of times where I thought he was going to shoot the 3 ball, but he was aggressive and he got to the rim and got to the line. And I think that's actually really encouraging. The other thing I saw was was that they hung around pretty much the whole game.
Yeah.
There were a lot of times where the game could have gotten out of hand, and for it to be a 9-point game, it felt like almost like a 20-point Toronto win, but it ended up being a 9-point game. The Warriors were able to hang around on the road. I think that bodes well for them playing going forward into the series, because you look at it, Steph had 34, Klay had 21. I think the next leading scorer was Draymond with 10. So they didn't really get a lot of production out of their bench, and I know you don't necessarily get that on the road as much as you do at home. So moving forward, I think the Warriors are going to make some adjustments, especially on Pascal Siakam. It seemed like everything that left his hand went in. I don't think that's going to be the case next game. They're still going to play some tough defense on Kawhi. They were doing a really good job. I still think that the Warriors are very much alive in the series, even though I'm upset. What do you think, Jason?
I think that the Warriors, one area that they need to one area they need to adjust is turnovers.
Mm-hmm.
I know during the regular season, and I mean I mentioned this to you, and you mentioned how sometimes they just turn the ball over a lot, but I think that's going to be key, especially in the finals. Controlling the ball, being more efficient, and not turning the ball over. The Warriors had, I believe, let me see here, it says 17 total turnovers, and then the Raptors had 17 points off of those turnovers. So
what's interesting, though, is Toronto had 10 turnovers, and the Warriors also had 17 points off, so it was even that way.
Yeah.
But they did steal possessions.
But I think also with those turnovers, though, especially in the finals, it's almost like a momentum shifter. Like sometimes defensively when you get those stops or you get those fast breaks, off of a steal or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you get the crowd involved. I mean, literally there were so many different points during the game when there were some crazy threes. Like Danny Green had that crazy one, and then Van Fleet had that prayer, dude. There
were so many prayers that went in for Toronto, I swear.
But once they made it, the crowd went nuts. And that boosts your confidence not only as a shooter, but also for your team,
Mm-hmm.
And so those key moments are very important for a game, especially in, this championship moment,
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you, do you think Golden State should be worried, or do you think Toronto should be worried that Golden State's going to come out and give them an avalanche in Game 2?
I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
I think for both teams, I think the Raptors should be worried about the Warriors shooting, because I felt like this was kind of like an off night.
It did feel off, even though Steph had a great game.
Steph did, but the supporting cast,
Mm-hmm.
I felt was a little off. I mean, we did see that deep two by Looney, and we were both like, what did we just watch?
I was like, was that KD out there? Because he's kind of blocked by someone else. I was like, did KD run out on the court? Why is Kevon taking that shot?
But no, I think the Raptors got a break, They played good defense and rebounded really well, but I think come Game 2 with these adjustments, you're going to see fresher, crisper picks, better cutting by the Warriors, and they're going to look to score in the paint a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But also on the Warriors side, they got to be worried about turnovers and the emergence of Pascal Siakam, in my opinion.
Yeah.
He's playing like a stud.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think we're going to have another crazy 13 for 15 from the field from Pascal. I still think you can have very effective games. If I'm the Warriors, or if I'm Toronto, I would be worried about the Warriors, because usually the Warriors don't come out and have 2 duds in a row. Steve Kerr usually has his team ready to play. And one thing I saw at the very end of the game is the Warriors lost. Toronto was going crazy, but I saw Steph clapping. And he was clapping, and he gave a Draymond a high five. And I'm sitting there thinking as a fan, I'm like, holy crap, he's getting psyched up. And, if your leader is getting psyched up like that after a loss, you can really tell that they're going to internalize this as a team, and they're really going to come out firing. And I'm looking for what Steve Kerr is going to do on Pascal Siakam, because I think they had a really good game plan for Kawhi Leonard. They were forcing the ball out of his hands quite a bit, and that did lead to some open threes by Marc Gasol and Pascal and Fred VanVleet, Danny Green. But you're going to live with those every once in a while. I'm curious to see, are you going to put more length on Pascal? Are you going to have someone like Kevon Looney switch out on him more? and have Draymond take Kawhi, I think that could be a really interesting series to see those kinds of adjustments.
Let me ask you this. Where do you see this series going? I know you're a Warriors fan, but, honestly, where do you think the series is going to end up?
I think Warriors in 6 still. That was my prediction, yes. I expected Toronto to win 1 game at home. Now, I thought the Warriors are going to win game 1 because that's typically the game that the well-rested team will have ready to go. And also, it's usually easier to steal game 1 on the road than it is game 2. But I had the Warriors splitting the series in Toronto, going back and winning 2 in Golden State, and then, obviously coming back, losing to Toronto, winning at home. So that's kind of what I think. I honestly do think the Warriors are going to rebound. I mean, they've been in the finals for 5 years straight for a reason. I remember down 3-1 against KD and Westbrook, the team dug deep and found a way to win. I remember last year against the Houston Rockets, down 3-2, they came and found a way to win 2 games in a row. And even the last series that they played against Portland, they were down by double digits at halftime and came back to win every single one of those games. So I don't think this is a team that you can ever count out, and I don't think you should take them lightly, even if they are down. They might actually be even more dangerous when they are down.
Gotcha. I have Raptors in 7.
Yeah.
I think the Raptors are getting hot at the right time. Players are stepping up when they need to, and they're playing lights-out defense. But anyways,
we shall see. It's going to be a really good series. I don't think it's going to be like Warriors, KD, Steph sweeping LeBron or in 5 LeBron kind of thing. This is going to be a dogfight, and that begs the question: does KD actually come back after Game 2? Well, we'll see.
We'll see.
I'm going to just take a second to talk about that narrative that the Warriors don't need KD to win. What if the Warriors fall down 0-2 after Game 2 and KD comes back and they end up winning the series? I wonder how that changes NBA free agency and how people view KD. And Steph, really, for that matter, which would be a really interesting discussion. But anyways, moving on, we're going to talk about some NCAA news, college hoops, almost like the lack of college hoops. And Jason, I know you've been following the story a little bit more closely than I have. It's this senior in high school. His name's RJ Hampton, and he had the opportunity to go to college and play basketball. He's a high recruit, one of the top recruits in the nation, but instead he's going to go play pro basketball in Australia. And so, Jason, what are your thoughts on this whole situation, him choosing to go play in Australia, and what kind of precedent do you think can be set from his decision?
Well, one thing to know is that RJ Hampton actually reclassified. He was actually originally in the 2020 class.
Wow.
And he reclassified to 2019, so he's a year younger than the current seniors that are in the 2019 class.
So he's probably 17 years old.
Yeah, he pulled last year we saw Marvin Bagley do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
He reclassified and became eligible, graduated early, and then went to Duke.
Okay.
So I mean, it's not uncommon for this to happen. But I think also his decision is a little uncommon. Mm-hmm. Which was interesting is because he had some big programs. It looked like, according to 24/7 Sports, his top 3 or last 3 schools, really recruiting him hard was Kansas, Memphis, and Texas Tech. Memphis looked like they were going to be a top pick just because of Penny Hardaway. They currently have the top recruiting class right now, and so it looked like he was really going to sign there. But he went on ESPN and did his decision and then announced he's going to go play. And
I'm taking my talents to South.
I literally felt like that this was the LeBron James decision. If it was pretty cool. When I watched it live, one thing that he said was playing college sports was never in his ideal path. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think I don't have a problem with him going to play pro sports, in Euro, across the seas. But I mean, we've seen this happen before. Thon Maker, he was 19 when he was a senior in high school, mm-hmm. and he was able to classify and skip college to go play directly into the NBA. I mean, he had to get approval, mm-hmm. But he passed. And then Emmanuel Mudiay, I mean, he's an example. He went to go play in China. His story is a little bit different because I believe he was academically ineligible to play in college. He was just like, it was pretty bad.
He didn't care about school, needless to say.
Oh, yeah. And so, I mean, RJ Hampton was totally eligible to play. He was a smart kid, you know, he did graduate high school.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit different situation. But, you know, this kid, he was the number 5 player in the nation. I mean, he's a combo guard. He's 6'5". He's lengthy. I think this is going to be an interesting year for him. He wants to be a professional. And so he's going to learn quickly what life without mama and daddy is, you know.
Mama and dada.
Yeah. He's going to be on his own. He wants to play with men, you know, grown men. So I think he'll learn a lot. I don't know what kind of caliber of talent is over there in New Zealand.
Oh, New Zealand, not Australia, right?
Yeah, it's New Zealand. And so I know the Australian national team's really good, you know. But, I mean, once again, it's a different country. So we'll see. Let me ask you this, Mark. I know you're not super big into college sports, but do you like this idea of foregoing college to go play professionally overseas, or do you think there's talks that the NBA and the Players Union are going to diminish the one-and-done rule so they can go straightly out of high school. Do you think it's smart for him to just go overseas now, or should he have waited?
See, this is the tough question for me, because I'm trying to scrap my brain and think, what are the benefits to RJ Barrett playing a year in New Zealand as opposed to playing a year in college? Or, you know, I mean, I guess you're going to be getting paid in New Zealand, but it's not a significant NBA amount of money, you know. It's obviously not as big as the NBA. I'm just kind of confused. Like, what? I know he doesn't want to play in college. That wasn't his goal, but that's almost like the vehicle to get to the NBA. And if I was him, I probably would have chosen college ball, just in the fact that you're going to get a lot more attention, I think, playing college hoops in the States as opposed to in New Zealand. Scouts aren't going to forget about you. But is it a good decision on his part? I would have to say no. If I'm him, I want publicity. I want to be highly touted. I want to have big moments in, you know, a March Madness tournament to really improve my draft stock. I don't know if this is going to affect it, but yeah, I mean, I always think, though, that the college kind of almost takes advantage of free labor a lot with college sports, in the fact that, they give these kids the opportunity to go to college, especially with, you know, potential NBA players. NFL's a little bit different. It's like 3 years of eligibility, so they're in school a little bit longer. But I almost feel like it's a business decision on NCAA's part, just to bring in these star players to play for them for a year to really hype up their business. And from that aspect, I'm like, okay, you know what, go play professionally in New Zealand. I mean, I think it's kind of a whack system a little bit from the NCAA, but ultimately I just kind of don't understand the decision on RJ Hampton's part.
One thought that comes to my mind is, I can understand going to play overseas with, like, professional, so to speak. I think he's more free to be himself, to play the way that he wants to play. Obviously, he's going to be on a team that has a coach with a strategy and a system in place. But I also see the other side of the argument of, if he were to go to college, let's say to a school, let's say that system that he would have played in didn't fit his style of play. I mean, that could technically affect his draft stock, you know. And so I can see this move going to play overseas actually benefiting him in that aspect. I totally agree with you on the exposure here in the States. I don't know what it's like in New Zealand, or if they travel, you know, to different countries and playing. Like, I don't know anything about it. So.
Yeah, but I hadn't heard of the New Zealand team before RJ Hampton. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but for my own exposure and experience, I've always known, you know, the Spanish league in Europe being a really good league. The one that Luka Doncic came out of. It's like the best league that he
could have played in
compared to the NBA or college. You know, I just feel like the college sports is the best. I don't know. You play better talent You know, the players in the States, I mean, they play better. Obviously, the world is catching up with the United States, but I mean, hey, we've still won the gold how many years?
A lot.
You know, I mean, we're very dominant. I mean, the world is, you know, catching up, and we're not blowing out teams like we used to. But so I can see that aspect of it, but you know what? We're going to have to see.
Yeah, we're going to have to see. And I think it's interesting, the other point I think about, like, what if he had, like, gone to, like, Duke or something, and you have a coach, like a well-respected coach, like, touting you, almost coming out like, oh, this is a great kid, he loves the game, he works extremely hard. I mean, isn't that valuable in itself? If you get like a, you know, a solid, even the Kentucky's coach recommendation, you know, a premier basketball college, just for like the exposure thing coming out into the NBA. So that's just kind of where I look at it, a lot of those things. But it's going to be an interesting wait and see process, because I mean, I'm really interested to see like where he's going to end up, how well he plays in New Zealand, and how much people believe, like, you know, New Zealand's competition is akin to the United States competition, and where he really ends up in the draft the following year. So I think that whole thing is going to be interesting. Is it starting a new trend? I do not think so. I think it really is player dependent, like the NBA is. The NBA has always really relied on its stars and star players. So let's just say if this was a young LeBron James going to New Zealand, well, guess what? He's going to get drafted high, you know? So it really is dependent on that. So do you think it's a new trend?
I don't, especially with the rumors and serious talks of the NBA changing the age limit down to 18. So they can come right out of high school and make that their own business decision. I mean, I feel like if you're in a financial situation where you need money now, I could totally see, you know, taking advantage of that. I mean, I don't know what they're paying you or if it's significant.
I mean, you would be technically getting paid in college, right? Under the table kind of stuff, you would think. You would think, but.
I mean, going to college, you get free housing. You get free food. I mean, everything's paid for. So, but who knows? Maybe he's doing it for his family, but maybe he's doing it for himself. So, I don't think it's a trend. I mean, we've seen a couple people do it throughout the years, but I don't know. We'll just see how it goes.
Okay, perfect. Well, yeah, that's a lot of basketball talk for the day. So we're gonna move on to some NFL news, and actually a little bit more NFL news this week. Interesting stories coming out, and some things that have kind of been in the works for a little bit longer. We're going to start off with probably the most, I think, impactful one in terms of Super Bowl potential team, and we're going to start with the Rams. We're going to talk about Todd Gurley and his knee, specifically knee arthritis, what people have diagnosed it as. And, yeah, what kind of the implications, what that could mean for the Rams, Todd Gurley, their Super Bowl chances. So, yeah, Jason, I know that towards the end of the season in the playoffs, Todd Gurley wasn't his same self, and people have speculated different reasons, but it's seeming more and more that it's because of his knee problems, his arthritis. He wasn't really able to get it going. So, do you think this medical condition is going to affect Todd Gurley going forward? And if so, where do the Rams go from here?
I definitely think it's something to be worried about, and I think the Rams are actually a little bit worried about it. With their third-round pick, they chose a running back out of Memphis, Darrell Henderson. I think that pick was it's like a security blanket, so to speak, because, I mean, you said it's arthritis in his knee, the same knee that he tore in college.
At Georgia, right?
Yeah. Luckily, though, I will say that since he's been playing in the league, he hasn't had any issues up to this point with that knee. So that is encouraging. But, I mean, it seems to be some wear and tear, and I think the Rams are preparing, you know, just in case for the next phase of what they want to do with their offense, as well as to do with Todd Gurley. But what do you think?
I think this is something to be extremely concerned about, because more to do with how the Rams kind of operate as an offense, and obviously Todd Gurley, like the individual, the player, I feel for him in this scenario, because I love football players and running backs. You know, it was almost like a renaissance of running backs coming back with Zeke and Bell and, Gurley and all those guys and Saquon, and then you have something like this hit, and the running back position might be devalued again. But moving specifically back to Todd Gurley, I think it's something to be extremely concerned about, because I think this is like a degenerative condition. I read an article about this on the USA team, the RamWire USA Today, and it was posted back on March 4th, and it's talking about Todd Gurley's knee. So obviously this is after the Super Bowl, kind of that playoff run when he wasn't himself. And basically there's this doctor who specializes in this, Dr. Vincent Bonisor Vincent Bonisor spoke to Dr. Jesse Morse, and basically he specializes in skeletal injuries, arthritis, stuff like that, and he said that he believes Todd Gurley's best years are behind him. And I think that's a big red flag when you have a professional opinion like that, looking at an injury significant like that for a running back especially, who gets a lot of beating. That's going to change the dynamic of not only the NFC West, but even like the power structure in the NFL. Because, you watch the Rams play, and who are they 100% dependent on offense? It's Todd Gurley in that running back position, and Todd Gurley is a special talent. If he keeps going the way he's going, he's a Hall of Famer, easy, first ballot. He's been doing some incredible things in his career, but I am extremely concerned that he'll never be Todd Gurley again. That injury is going to degenerate, and I don't think he's going to be able to take those 20-25 touches a game. He'll be more of a situational guy, and you should be really concerned if you're a Rams fan, because I don't think Jared Goff's that good. I think that whole engine is Todd Gurley, and without him, I think you're a completely different team.
Yeah. One thing I will say is Sean McVay is a really good head coach. He's a very smart coach, and so if this becomes a serious problem, which it's looking like it's going to be, I think that Sean McVay can really bounce back. I think he can game plan he's a smart guy. I think he knows football pretty well. And I think, especially with this draft that they, draft class that's coming in, I think they're preparing for potential life without Todd Gurley, or if he becomes a situational kind of player. I think the people that they're drafting and that they're bringing in will fill the void of how dominant he was in those certain areas that he was really good in.
So, overall, do you think this is going to be a problem for Todd Gurley next year? Do you think he's going to have to decrease his workload to continue to play, especially with that huge investment that the Rams have in him, his contract?
I think the inner competitiveness in him, he's going to just try to tough it through and just try to be the Todd Gurley of old, so to speak. He's going to try to be really dominant like before. And so I think that if he does do that, it's going to come back to bite him. I think his career is going to be cut short because of how bad his knees are. Kind of switching sports. Brandon Roy, perfect example. He had degenerative knees. He was a stud for the Portland Trailblazers, but unfortunately his career was cut short. But we'll see. I hope Todd Gurley is still a dominant running back. Hopefully this isn't as serious as it's looking to be. I drafted him once for fantasy, and he was money.
He was money for me too.
So, fingers crossed, dude.
Yeah, fingers crossed for sure. We wish Todd Gurley the best. We hate to see greats and really any player go out because of injury like this. So.
And he's young too.
Yeah, he hasn't only been in the league
24
or 5 years. Yeah,
and he's young.
He's young, and he had a bright future ahead of him. Still might, but we're going to move on to another topic of NFL discussion, and it's going to be Gerald McCoy. And as you know, the Buccaneers released Gerald McCoy a few weeks ago and re-signed, ironically enough, Ndamukong Suh in his place. The same defensive tackle that was taken one spot before him in that draft. So they really replaced him with a guy with a similar age, less money, I think. Obviously not long term, but we just kind of wanted to speculate on that. We know that Gerald McCoy's been visited the Ravens, planning to visit the Panthers, planning to visit the Browns, but we just kind of want to open it up to the whole NFL field and really speculate what we think the best landing spots are for him. So, Jason, what do you think the best landing spot is for Gerald McCoy?
To be honest with you, and I know you're gonna laugh at me. I've told you this before. I've been really excited about the direction the Browns are going. I know. I'm excited. I love Baker Mayfield. I thought he had a great rookie year. Obviously, they just signed Odell. And I think they have a great, also a third option receiver, Joey Galloway. I think he's going to be a really good receiver, learning from Jarvis Landry.
Austin Callaway, you mean?
Yeah, sorry, my bad.
Yeah, Joey Galloway, I know.
Yeah,
similar name.
My bad. But also on defense, they have been beefing up that defensive line, and I pulled up the depth chart. Currently, their defensive front, you got Myles Garrett, obviously super dominant player. Larry Ojunobi, really good. They just signed in the offseason Sheldon Richardson, which I think was also a good pickup. They did pick up Oliver Vernon from the Giants.
Yeah. Good pass rusher, good player.
Good pass rusher, and I think you throw Gerald McCoy in that mix, you have a good core. You have a good defensive rotation. You have a very dominant defensive front. Good against the run, good against the pass. And, I mean, the inner excited fan, I'm not a Browns fan, but they're definitely a team, I want to follow and just see how they perform. I think it'd be awesome, if you were to join that team and really change the culture and really help change Cleveland.
Well, I know you're super excited about the Browns, but I'm really going to shoot myself in the foot as a Raiders fan, really throwing this idea out here. So please, Raider Nation, whoever you are listening, I apologize. Don't kill me for this. But in terms of teams that could really use his services, I look at a team like the Los Angeles Chargers. And the reason why I do that is because I see what they have on the edges, and I see what they have inside. So obviously, as we know, they have Joey Bosa on one edge, stud. Melvin Ingram on the other edge, stud. Brandon Mebane, stud. Nose tackle, more. He's not really a pass rusher, but he can push the pocket. And then they drafted this guy, Jerry Tillery, high in the draft this year, who I think is going to be really good. He's athletic. He's got a lot of potential. But if you're the Chargers, why not add another pass rusher in that mix? You have Brandon Mebane. Jerry Tillery is going to take that role of pass rusher, but he is still young. Why not get a Gerald McCoy, put him in the line? Because you're going to have on run stuffing downs, you're going to have Mebane in there, then you can just rotate Gerald McCoy in. And I can't imagine a front of Gerald McCoy, Jerry Tillery, Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram coming at you, especially in third and long. And really for the simple fact that in the division you're in, you're really going to have to be able to stop the pass now, especially with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. They obviously have a good pass offense, really good pass offense. You now have Derek Carr with Antonio Brown, added a lot more weapons as well. I think passing is really going to be the name of the game in the AFC West, and you're going to need to get to the quarterback. So I think maybe a one-year deal there is going to be perfect for a guy like Gerald McCoy. He says he wants to win. The Chargers were a really good team last year. I think it could be a really good fit, even though it's not a great scheme fit, because I know they run that 3-4.
I feel you. I see you. Another good place I think would be very interesting if you were to go to the Ravens. Historically, they have always had a very dominant defense, and I think he kind of fits the bill of, kind of the culture that they want to build around. I think he could fit in there really well, I think they run a 3-4, so it's kind of a little out of place than what he's normally, used to, but I think he's a stud. I think he was also the number 2 pick whenever he was drafted.
Yeah,
he was a great. He was a stud. He's
just behind Ndamukong Suh. I mean, who's an absolute freak of nature. So
I think that'd be a cool sign. I know when he visited there, they didn't. I think he was there for 3 days, and they didn't come out with a deal. But I'm not sure if that's just money talking or if he's worried about the right fit. From a fan's perspective, I think he would fit the culture there and, what they're trying to build with this young team with Lamar Jackson running the the reins of the offense.
We'll
but
see how that goes for
we'll
sure.
see.
But, okay, so another fit. I'm kind of debating between a couple of teams. It's really going to come down to two teams, but I'm going to go with the Seattle Seahawks. They're in kind of dire need of a pass rush right now. I know they've tried Sheldon Richardson. They really don't have that much of a pass rusher at this point on their defensive line. I think that could be a good fit. They're very well coached. They don't necessarily run a 4-3, but they kind of run a little hybrid mix of it, and I think he could fit really well within that defense. They lost Frank Clark, so he could be an upgrade in that defense anywhere. They really need a pass rush, especially with that Russell Wilson contract. They're not really going to be getting a lot of high-paid free agents there anytime soon. And then the last team, I'm just going to throw them in the mix, the New England Patriots, because, I mean, is there any team that fits the bill, pun intended, better than the Patriots for a player like this? You know, a guy who wants to win, who's been a stud for most of his career, and who Bill Belichick could probably get the most use out of, especially being the defensive genius he is. I mean, like, really, do you have any doubt that if Gerald McCoy goes to the Patriots, he'd end up with, like, 10 sacks? You know? I mean, I think it's a good fit for pretty much everyone. So those are the teams. Is there anything else you want to add? Any other team you want to add in there?
I would say the Cowboys, but I'm not going to say the Cowboys.
No. I mean, they drafted, that defensive tackle?
Yeah, out of Baylor.
Who they made sign, like, a work-hard contract?
Yeah. We'll see how that goes.
I'm sorry, Jason.
It's okay.
Yeah. But perfect. So, yeah, I think that's going to conclude our podcast today. Had a lot of topics. Yeah, really excited about the NBA Finals. We'll see how that goes. And, if you like this podcast, like what we're doing, please consider subscribing, liking, and sharing it. It really helps when we get our content out there, especially on the YouTube. We need viewers, like, subscribes to really, get that algorithm going in our favor. So anything else you want to add, Jason? Any shout-outs you want to make?
Shout out to that couple that annoyed us in the very beginning. I think the girl came back and won. She said she wasn't going to stop until she won, and as of right now, I don't hear anything, so I think she won.
Yeah, and I also want to shout out the one dude who interrupted the middle of our podcast while we were recording. He came in, opened the door, and said, "Hey guys, you have about 30 minutes left in the room." That was beautiful on his part. Some masterful editing in the middle really drowned that out.
Little does he know, we stop when we want to stop.
Exactly.
So there's no limit to J-Mac and the Stallion. We're here 24/7, 7 days a week.
Perfect.
We're here for you guys.
We're here. Yeah, we love you guys. We love the people who are able to check us out every week, man. We really do appreciate it. We're really enjoying ourselves. We're having more content coming out, more planned. Let us know if there's anything that you want us to particularly talk about. If you guys go into the comments or send us a message on Facebook or anything like that, JMac on the Stallion and the Stallion on Facebook. If you guys are interested, I haven't necessarily talked to you about it, Jason, but we might be able to do live shows if we have enough participation. We might be able to do a live stream of the show, get a little face shot, and respond to some viewers. So let us know if that's something you would like. But thanks for listening. Until next time, guys.